In this demonstration, we will show you how to take a model and create a recess for it to sit inside of, and walk you through the process of how to create a faux hand-carved scalloped edge using the sculpting tools. Let's start off by creating a new file. So we're going to go over to our startup tasks and we're going to click create new file. This is going to be a single-sided job. We're going to make it 10 inches by 8 inches. And we're going to make sure that we have 3/4 of an inch of worth of material. And it's going to be in inches, obviously. We're going to zero off our material surface. Our data will be set to the bottom left, and we are going to choose a high resolution. And that should be great. Let's just click OK. The first thing we're going to need to do is bring in our horse head that we want to put into our faux carved recessed dish. So to do that, we're going to go to our modeling tab, and we are going to go up here to import a component or 3D model. We'll navigate to our creating a carved recess in our tutorials folder, and in our files folder we're going to find the horse head model. Let's select that and open that up. Now it's going to be put down automatically in our bottom left hand corner, but it's automatically selected when it comes in. So if we press F9 on our keyboard, that's going to center that into the center of our job space. Now to help us sort of visualize what's going on, we should go ahead and tile our views. So we're going to click over here and we're going to arrange our views vertically. And so now on our left hand side we have our 2D view, and on our right hand side we have our 3D view. Now we're going to need to size up our model to be the appropriate size for this particular project, both X and Y and also in the shape height. So let's worry about the X and Y first, and we're going to go over here and select set object size. Now in this case we're going to have our width is going to be set to 7 inches. We're going to link our X and our Y together, and we're going to auto scale our Z, and we'll click apply. So now our horse head is at the right X and Y dimensions, and also we've scaled up our Z. But now we're going to go in and officially set our shape height to what it needs to be, or our Z height. So with the horse head selected, we can go over here to change the properties of our component, and we're going to put this horse head into a 0.4 inch deep recess. So what we want to do is we want to change our shape height to be a little bit less than the depth of the recess we're going to put it in. So in this case we're going to make it 0.375 inches, and we're going to hit spacebar, and that has adjusted the shape height to what we've told it to, and that should be adequate for what we're going to need. And what that's going to do, like I had mentioned, it will make sure that our horse head is just a hair below the surface of our material, so that when we go to cut it we won't have any flat spots, or it won't be proud of our material surface. So let's close that down. Now to help us visualize what we're doing here, we should go ahead and add in a zero plane. And to do that, we're going to use this button right here. When we click that, you'll see that we're going to add in a zero plane. We have a new component on our level. You can also see it in our 3D view, but you can't see it in our 2D view. That's because our software has gone in and created a brand new level for us, put the zero plane on it, and then turned it off. If I click it on, you'll see it now in the 2D view. When I click it back off again, you can't see it anymore. And it's been turned off for a reason. That way it won't obscure any of our 2D vectors or our 3D bitmap representations in our 2D view. So let's close that off. Now having this here not only will help us visualize better what's going to be happening with our part, but it will also make sure that when we create our tooling that we get a nice smooth edge around the dish shape, and that will make it look really nice in the end. There won't be any potential odd spots around the edge of our dish. So next what we're going to do is we are going to require a vector around our horse head so that we can use that as the basis of our dish shape. Now when we sized it up to be 7 inches, that left a lot of white space around our component, and that's great because we're going to need that white space for our offset vectors and also for our dish that we're ultimately going to make here. So let's select our horse head, and we're going to go over here and we're going to click on the create vector boundary around selected components. And when I do that, if I off click my horse head, you'll see that I now have a vector boundary around the outside of my horse head. Now we're going to need to offset that. So we're going to go to our drawing tab, and with that vector selected, we're going to choose our offset option. And we're going to offset outwards a distance large enough so that when we create our dish, it will give us enough clearance so that we can carve our faux carved look, and also our content won't ride up on the edge of our dish. And typically what we do is we offset this 25% more than our shape height. So in this case, we're actually going to offset this out a ½ inch, and we're going to delete our original vectors, and we're going to go ahead and select offset. And you'll see now we have this nice new vector to work with, and we can go ahead and close this down. So next we're going to have to create a dish shape that we can then go in and sculpt to give us a nice hand carved faux look. So to do that, we're going to select this vector. We're going to go to our modeling tab, and we're going to create a brand new shape. This is going to be a curved profile. We're going to set our angle to be 75%. There won't be any base height, but we're going to scale it to an exact height. But we're going to limit it to the height that we wanted our dish to be. So our dish is going to be 0.4, as we said earlier. So we're going to limit that to 0.4 of an inch. We're going to subtract that, and we're going to click apply. And you'll see now our horse head has been put into a recessed dish. And the dish looks like it's going to fit it perfectly. Because we changed the shape height of our horse head to be slightly less than the depth of our dish, then there shouldn't be anything proud of our modeling plane. And you can tell that because it's all underneath our modeling plane. If we go up and click View and we undraw our modeling plane, you'll see that the hazy look goes away. If we go View and show our modeling plane, then that hazy view is back. If our horse head was proud of that, bits of our horse head would be the same color as our zero plane here, and that would be a bad thing. We want to go in and adjust the depth of our dish, or maybe the angle that we use to create the dish. Now, one of the things we're going to want to check is to make sure that our horse head is not riding up on the edge of our dish. And to do that, what we can do is we can close down our create shape form and click our horse head here, and we can zoom in a little bit. We can have a look at the edge of our horse. Now we want to make sure that our horse isn't riding up on this edge, and it looks pretty good to me. If it was, then again we want to go in and readjust the shape again to make sure that it wasn't, or the areas that it was weren't making it so that the part of the horse was projecting above our modeling plane. In this case, everything looks really good, so I'm really quite happy with that. Let's look back down straight onto our model. Now, as you can see, there's quite a hard edge here between our dish and our modeling plane, and that's great and all, but we should probably maybe smooth that out a bit to get us started with our faux hand carved look. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to shift select our dish component and our zero plane, and we're going to go up here and we are going to smooth those components. So if we click that, we'll be given a warning to say that we can't smooth two individual components at the same time. We'll need to bake those together if we want to do that, and we're okay with that, so let's just click OK. Now we're going to end up smoothing this twice at the maximum smoothing strength that we can, so let's just go ahead and run that all the way to the top, and we're going to bake that smoothing. Then we're going to do it one more time, and we're going to bake that smoothing, and then we're going to click OK. Now that sharp edge that we had, close that down. Now the sharp edge that we had is now nice and smooth, and that looks much better than what it did. Now to go ahead and to sculpt this edge to make it look like that hand carved look, we're going to use some of our sculpting tools. And to do that, we're going to click over here at our Sculpt Visible Model. So let's click that. And because I don't have a component selected, then it's going to come up and ask me if I want to create a new blank component. Well, I don't want to. I want to make sure that I have this zero plane baked component ready to use. So now when I click that, I'll be able to go in and sculpt just this component. Let's maximize this so we can really get a good look at what we're doing. And let's have a look at our sculpting setup here. So we're going to be using the smudge operation here. And when we do that, what we're actually going to be doing is moving material, almost like we're pushing some clay out of the way. We're going to change our diameter to be around about 141, and then our strength is around 167, and then we're going to go ahead with our smoothness. We'll make that 7. Now these numbers will change depending on what kind of a sculpted edge you'd want. If you want to have big recesses where it looks like you've come in and carved it, or whether you like to have finer recesses. So that'll all depend on what you would like to see. So let's just go ahead now and slowly start to move some of this material out. And you'll see what's happening when I do that. I'm actually making nice sort of tool marks or faux tool marks. It looks like I've come in with a chisel maybe and chiseled out my actual carving. And I'm going to go around this. And if by mistake you go too far, you can just use your Control Z to undo that, and it'll actually remember what you're doing or what you've done. We'll just keep going around this all the way around. And the idea is to have it sort of semi-random, so it does kind of look like you've come in with your chisel and cut that out. And there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. So we'll keep that. Then we'll click OK. And then we can take a look and see what the result is. And I'm pretty darn happy with that. That looks okay. So if you're happy with that, what we can do is retile our views. And we'll see that now we have a new bitmap here. And we may as well go ahead and rename this particular smooth plane that we have to our carved dish. And that looks great. So let's go ahead and save this off before we go ahead and start to talk about how we should create tooling for this. So File, Save As, Horsehead, and we'll go 3D modeling, and we'll save that off so you can refer to that later if you would like. So to create some tooling from this, we're going to have to go over to our Toolpaths tab. So we'll just go ahead and do that by clicking here. Now, as always, one of the most important things we need to do is to set up our material as if it is actually the piece of material that's going to be on our CNC machine. So let's just go ahead and check that. We'll click Set. So the thickness is going to be 0.75 of an inch thick. Our data will be the bottom left. It's important that we tell it that we're going to be zeroing off our material surface, and we're going to want to make sure that our composite relief or the model that we want to actually cut is pushed all the way to the top of our material. We don't want a gap at the top. If we did do that, then we'd have a really hard recess here. As the tool would come up and stop, we'll have a bit of a lip, and we don't want that. We want to make sure that it's all the way to the top. And we've also accounted for a little bit there by making sure that our model was a little bit shallower than the ridge of our recess. And so that way, if there was any sort of variation in our material surface, we've accounted for that and left a little bit of room for that. So that's great. Now you're going to want to make sure that your rapid Z gaps are safe and appropriate for your setup. That way you're going to be avoiding any hold down mechanisms you might have or clamps. Make sure that your start position is set appropriate again for your machine. In this case, 1/2 inch is perfectly fine. And we're going to click OK. Now, in order to cut this, we're going to need to do 2 different toolpaths. We're going to have to do a 3D roughing toolpath and also a 3D finishing toolpath. And we're going to need to actually choose a boundary to make sure that our tooling doesn't go outside of that. That way we're not wasting time cutting any of our flat material. And also, it'll round up nicely, and we can make sure that we have a smooth transition between the edge of our dish and the top of our material. So let's just go ahead and start off with our 3D roughing. Now again, we're going to need a vector for this. So we're going to use a 1/2 inch end mill. That's perfect. But we're going to need to use a selected vector. And right now, the only vector that we have is the one that we use to create our dish with, and that's just not quite good enough. It needs to be shaped more like the outside edge of this, that faux hand carved look that we made. So to do that, we're going to need to go back to our drawing tab. So we're going to flip back over to our drawing tab, and we are going to use a tool on our drawing tab called Trace Bitmap. So because we have a bitmap representation of our faux carved edge, we can select that, and we can go ahead and have the software fit a vector around that based on the colors that we'd like to do. So we're going to use the color setting. We're going to make sure that we select the white, and you'll see that we have a trace color representation of where we're actually going to trace. So we're going to trace along here, and that looks pretty good. If you're not happy with that, you can mess around with your corner fits, your noise filter, and your bitmap fading, but I think it's pretty good just the way it is. So we'll preview that, and we'll see that we get an outside vector and an inside vector. But I'm happy with that, so we'll hit apply and then close. We're going to select the resulting vector, but we just want this inside one. So we're going to right click on it. We're going to ungroup those objects back onto the groups layer. And then we're going to go ahead and off click, select our outside vector, and we're going to delete that because we're not going to need that one. We just need this inside one for right now. So with that selected, let's jump back to our toolpath options. And with the selected vector, which we have now, we're going to use a boundary offset of 0. We don't want it to actually go outside of that boundary when we're doing our roughing pass. We'll leave a bit of allowance behind, and 0.03 is fine. We're going to use Z-level roughing. We're just going to go with profile last. We're going to go level by level, and we're going to go along the X, no ramp and plunge moves. And we're just going to call this 3D roughing. And it's always good to make sure we put in an indication of the tool that we're going to use. So a 1/4 inch end mill, and let's calculate that. And of course, we should always preview that. And that's what I expected to see. But if that was not what you expected to see, then you should go back and make sure that you adjust your tooling so that what you see here in your 3D preview is what you expect to see on your machine. If it doesn't look right here, it's certainly not going to look right in your machine. Let's just close that down, and let's go ahead and do our finishing pass. Now we're going to use our 1/8 inch bullnose end mill for this. If we wanted to make any changes to that, we could just click edit, and we could change any of our presets that we're allowed to change, but we're not going to change anything, so we're just going to go OK. Again, we're going to use our selected vector. We don't want any boundary offset at all. We're going to use a raster strategy, so it's going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to machine off that thin layer of material we left behind when we did our roughing pass. We'll call this 3D finishing, and we are going to again tell it what we have for a tool. So it's going to be a 125 end mill, and we'll calculate that. It's going to take a little bit longer to calculate because it's a small tool, and you'll see that our toolpath is a lot more dense than what our roughing pass was. Let's preview that visible toolpath, and everything looks really nice. Now you will notice that at the edge of our dish, there's a bit of a hard edge. Of course, you could sand that off as a post-production thing if you wanted to, but we can fix that right inside of our tooling if we would like by editing our finishing pass. So let's just double click on that. And if we give a slight boundary offset, so our finishing tool actually go outside the line that we have here, and we'll smooth that out for us a bit. So let's make a boundary offset of 0.5 of an inch. Let's recalculate that. And let's just preview that same toolpath again. We don't need to reset our preview because the part we're interested in really, the new stuff is just out at the edge here. So let's preview that visible toolpath, and you'll see now that it's smoothed that out nicely and everything looks really good. And I'm really quite happy with that. So if you're happy with that, we can close down our preview tooling. You can save off your toolpaths if you'd like, somewhere where you can find them to send you to your machine. And also we should go ahead and save off our file so that if we want to make any changes later, we can do that. So let's just click Save As, and we'll call this Toolpaths. And save that off. I hope you found that helpful. So this concludes this demonstration. Now, if you'd like to learn how to put your horse head in a nice smooth dish, just look below in the related videos and you'll see the video called Creating a Dished Recess, and that should help walk you through that.